A cloud of dust billowed across the golden plains of eastern Washington Territory as Zara Jameson streaked across the land on her black Arabian stallion, the horizon bending to her will as she rode with a freedom that defied the constraints of 1883 society. The wind tangled in her copper-red hair, escaped from its once neat bun, as she leaned forward in perfect harmony with the magnificent beast beneath her, both of them moving as one singular force of nature. From the fence of the sprawling Diamond S Ranch, Nathan Sullivan watched in awe, his jaw slackening as the woman and horse sailed over a fallen log that would have given his most seasoned ranch hands pause. In all his 30 years, he had never seen any one man or woman ride with such fearless abandon and natural skill. The woman was a revelation on horseback, her form perfect, her commands to the stallion nearly imperceptible. When she finally slowed and circled back toward the small creek that marked the boundary between their properties, Nathan couldn't help himself. He removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair, and approached with an expression of genuine admiration. "Madam," he called out, his voice carrying across the rustling grass, "I've been riding since before I could walk, but I've never seen anyone handle a horse like that." Zara pulled her mount to a halt, regarding the tall cowboy with wary green eyes. She was accustomed to men's opinions about her riding, usually followed by unwanted commentary about how ladies shouldn't ride astride or race across open country like some wild thing. "Thank you," she replied cautiously, gathering her reins. Nathan stepped closer, his blue eyes bright with excitement. "Teach me to ride like that," he said, the words tumbling out before he could consider their propriety. "I mean, I'd be honored if you would consider sharing some of your techniques. I've never seen anything like it." Zara's eyebrows rose in surprise. In the year since she'd arrived in Kennewick to take over her late uncle's modest horse farm, not one man had asked to learn from her. They'd offered unsolicited advice, attempted to buy her prized stallion for ridiculous sums, and a few had even tried to court her with transparent motives of acquiring her land, but none had acknowledged her superior skill. "You own the Diamond S, don't you?" she asked, patting her horse's neck as he snorted and pawed at the ground. "I believe we're neighbors, Mr. Sullivan." "Nathan," he corrected with a genuine smile that creased the corners of his eyes. "And yes, though I've only been back running things for 6 months, my father passed last winter." "I'm sorry for your loss," Zara said, softening slightly. "I'm Zara Jameson. I inherited the Whispering Pines horse farm from my Uncle Joseph." "Old Joe Jameson was your uncle?" Nathan looked surprised. "He was a fine horseman, but even he didn't ride like you just did." Zara allowed herself a small smile. "My father was a cavalry officer before he settled in Oregon. He taught me everything he knew, and then I learned more on my own." Nathan glanced at her magnificent Arabian. "That's Midnight Thunder, isn't it? I've heard stories about him all over the territory." "You know your horses," Zara acknowledged, impressed despite herself. "Not well enough, it seems." Nathan's expression grew earnest. "I wasn't joking about those lessons, Miss Jameson. The Diamond S has been losing ground to the larger outfits that can move cattle faster. If I could train my men to handle horses half as well as you do, it would make all the difference." Zara studied him thoughtfully. There was something refreshingly direct about Nathan Sullivan, with none of the condescension she usually encountered. "Meet me at Whispering Pines tomorrow at sunrise," she said finally. "We'll see if you're serious." Nathan's face lit up. "I'll be there." As promised, the first golden rays of dawn found Nathan at the gates of Whispering Pines, mounted on his chestnut gelding, Rusty. The morning air was crisp with early autumn, the scent of pine and sage heavy as dew evaporated from the grass. He had deliberately arrived early, not wanting to give Zara Jameson any reason to doubt his commitment. The horse farm was smaller than his ranch, but impeccably maintained. The white fences gleamed in the morning light, and the barn and stables looked freshly painted. It was clear that Zara had been working hard since taking over her uncle's property. He was admiring the layout when she emerged from the barn leading Midnight Thunder. Today her hair was braided neatly down her back, and she wore practical riding clothes, divided skirts that allowed her to ride astride comfortably while maintaining some semblance of propriety. "You're early," she called out, though there was approval in her tone. Nathan dismounted and tipped his hat. "Didn't want to waste a minute of daylight." Zara nodded, assessing his mount with a practiced eye. "Solid quarter horse. Good chest, strong legs. How long have you had him?" Raised him from a colt. "He's 8 now," Nathan replied, patting Rusty's neck affectionately. "Let's see what you can do," Zara said, gesturing to a fenced training area. "Show me how you ride now and I'll know where to start." For the next hour, Nathan rode under Zara's critical gaze, demonstrating the skills he'd developed over a lifetime of ranch work. He was good, very good by most standards, but he could feel the difference between his abilities and what he'd witnessed the day before. When he finally stopped, Zara approached and without preamble began adjusting his posture in the saddle. "You're riding too much with your hands and not enough with your body," she explained, her tone businesslike. "The best riders communicate with their horses through their weight, their legs, even their breathing. The reins are the last resort, not the first tool." Nathan listened intently, absorbing every word. "Show me," he requested. Zara mounted Thunder with a fluid grace that made the movement seem effortless. "Watch first," she instructed. "Feel how your horse responds to different signals." She demonstrated, guiding Thunder through a series of movements using subtle shifts in her weight and pressure from her legs. The horse responded as if they shared one mind, turning, stopping, and changing pace with barely visible cues. "Your turn," she said, dismounting. Nathan tried to replicate what he'd seen, but his first attempts were clumsy compared to Zara's fluid communication. "It's not something you'll master in one morning," Zara said, but her tone had softened. "It takes time to develop that connection." "I'm willing to put in the time," Nathan assured her. "How often can we work together?" Zara hesitated. "I have a business to run, Mr. Sullivan." "Of course." "I'd compensate you for your time," he offered. "And it's Nathan, please." She considered him for a moment. "3 mornings a week before I start my regular work, and I don't want your money." Nathan frowned. "I can't take up your time for nothing." "I'm not doing it for nothing," Zara replied. "In exchange, I need access to your southern pasture for grazing. The drought has left my grass too thin for my breeding stock." It was a fair trade, more than fair for the Diamond S. The southern pasture was underutilized, and the lessons would be invaluable. "Deal," Nathan said, extending his hand. Zara's grip was firm as they shook on their arrangement, her hands calloused from years of work with horses and leather. As weeks passed, their early morning sessions became a ritual that both looked forward to more than they would admit. Nathan proved to be an exceptional student, humble and determined to improve. Zara found herself genuinely enjoying the teaching process, especially with someone who respected her expertise without reservation. One morning in late October, they rode together along the creek that separated their properties. The trees were aflame with autumn colors, and frost crystallized on the grass in the shadows. They had progressed from basic posture and communication to more advanced techniques, riding at speed over varied terrain while maintaining perfect control. "You're a natural teacher," Nathan remarked as they paused to rest the horses. "Have you ever considered taking on more students?" Zara shook her head. "Most men aren't interested in learning from a woman." "Their loss," Nathan replied simply. Zara smiled at that, a rare, full smile that transformed her serious face. "How did you come to have such an open mind, Nathan Sullivan?" "Most ranchers I've met think women should stick to cooking and having babies." Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. "My mother ran the Diamond S for 5 years after my father was injured in the Civil War. She was as good a rancher as any man I've ever known. I learned early that ability isn't determined by whether you wear trousers or skirts." "She sounds remarkable." "She was," Nathan said softly. "She died of pneumonia when I was 15. My father never really recovered from losing her, though he managed the ranch until his heart gave out last winter." Zara's expression softened with understanding. "Is that why you were away until recently? I heard you were back east for some time." Nathan nodded. "I went to agricultural college in Pennsylvania. My father insisted. He wanted me to learn modern techniques, bring new ideas back to the Diamond S." His eyes scanned the rolling hills of his ranch. "I was in my final year when I got word he was failing. I made it back just in time to say goodbye." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the soft thud of hooves on damp earth and the occasional call of a hawk circling above. "What about you?" Nathan finally asked. "How did a cavalry officer's daughter end up running a horse farm in Washington Territory?" Zara's face clouded briefly. "My father died 3 years ago. My mother had passed when I was young. I was teaching riding at a ladies' academy in Portland when I received word about Uncle Joseph's death and his bequest." She gestured toward Whispering Pines in the distance. "I never expected to inherit everything, but he had no children of his own." "You miss Portland?" "Sometimes," Zara admitted. "But I've found more freedom here than I ever had there. In Portland, I was constantly fighting against what society expected of a woman alone. Here, people may raise eyebrows, but they generally leave me to my own devices." Nathan smiled. "Frontier folk tend to judge by results more than rules, and your horses speak for themselves." When they returned to Whispering Pines, Nathan surprised her by asking, "Would you join me for supper at the Diamond S tomorrow? My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, has been curious about you, and she's threatening to come spy on our lessons if I don't invite you properly." Zara hesitated. She had deliberately kept her distance from socializing since arriving in Kennewick. It was easier to maintain her independence if people saw her as the eccentric horsewoman who kept to herself. "It's just supper," Nathan added, seeing her reluctance. "And Mrs. Abernathy's apple pie is worth the trip alone." "All right," Zara agreed, surprising herself. "Tomorrow evening." The Diamond S main house was larger than Zara had expected, a handsome 2-story structure of timber and stone with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Lamplight glowed from within as she approached on Thunder, having decided that riding was less presumptuous than expecting Nathan to collect her in his buggy. Nathan met her at the stables, dressed in clean clothes that looked slightly stiff, as if seldom worn. His hair was neatly combed, and she noticed he had trimmed his beard. The realization that he had made an effort for her brought an unexpected warmth to her cheeks. "Welcome to the Diamond S," he said, helping her dismount though she hardly needed assistance. "Mrs. Abernathy" turned out to be a cheerful, round woman in her 60s, who clearly adored Nathan, but treated him with the fond exasperation of someone who had known him since childhood. "So you're the miracle worker who's been teaching this stubborn boy to ride properly," she said, ushering Zara into a dining room where the table was set with the good china. "About time someone knocked some sense into him." "Mrs. Abernathy," Nathan protested. "I've been riding since before you could walk." Yes, the housekeeper interrupted. And yet Miss Jameson here still had plenty to teach you, didn't she? Nathan's sheepish grin made Zara laugh, the sound surprising all of them with its naturalness. Dinner was a revelation. The food was excellent, but it was the easy conversation that Zara found herself enjoying most. Nathan spoke about his plans for the ranch, his ideas for breeding sturdier cattle that could better withstand the harsh winters, and his challenges with neighboring ranchers who viewed his college education with suspicion. "They call me professor behind my back," he admitted with a rueful smile. As if learning new methods is somehow less manly than doing things the same way forever. "People fear change," Zara observed. "I've had horse buyers walk away when they discover Whispering Pines is owned by a woman, only to return when they can't find comparable stock elsewhere." "Their loss is others' gain," Nathan said, raising his glass to her in a small toast. Later, after Mrs. Abernathy had served her famous apple pie and retired for the evening, Nathan showed Zara his father's library, a cozy room lined with bookshelves containing everything from practical guides on animal husbandry to volumes of poetry and philosophy. "My mother loved books," Nathan explained, running his fingers along the leather spines. "She insisted that being a rancher didn't mean abandoning civilization." "She was right," Zara said softly, examining a well-worn copy of Tennyson's poems. "My father felt the same. He would read to me every night, even when we were traveling with his regiment." Nathan watched her, struck by how the lamplight caught the copper highlights in her hair. "You know, when I first saw you riding, I thought you were some kind of spirit too wild and free to be real." Zara looked up, caught by the intensity in his blue eyes. "And now I know you're very real," he replied, "and far more remarkable than any spirit could be." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Zara broke it first, placing the book of poems carefully back on the shelf. "I should go. It's getting late." Nathan nodded, though reluctance was clear in his expression. "I'll saddle Thunder for you." Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the Inkai sky. As Nathan helped Zara mount, their hands touched briefly, and the contact sent a current through both of them. "Thank you for coming," Nathan said, looking up at her. "Thank you for inviting me," Zara replied, gathering her reins. "It was nice not to eat alone for a change." "You're welcome at the Diamond S anytime, Zara. Not just for lessons." She nodded, suddenly unable to trust her voice, and turned Thunder toward home. As she rode away, she could feel Nathan watching until she disappeared into the darkness. The next morning's lesson had a different quality, a new awareness humming between them that made ordinary interactions feel significant. When Nathan mastered a particularly difficult maneuver, Zara's praise brought a flush of pleasure to his face that had nothing to do with exertion. As winter approached, their lessons continued despite the increasingly bitter weather. On days when riding was impossible, they worked in Zara's barn, Nathan helping with repairs while Zara educated him on horse breeding and bloodlines. "The right match is everything," she explained one snowy afternoon as they examined the pedigree charts for her prized mares. "It's not just about pairing the strongest or fastest. Sometimes seemingly contradictory traits create the perfect balance." Nathan nodded, though his thoughts had drifted from horses to the woman beside him, whose strength and gentleness created their own perfect balance. Their friendship deepened as winter settled over the land. Nathan began joining Zara for Sunday dinners at Whispering Pines, bringing Mrs. Abernathy's baked goods and staying to help with evening chores. They talked for hours beside Zara's fireplace, sharing stories and dreams as the winds howled outside. Nathan spoke of his vision for the Diamond as not just a successful cattle operation. but a place that combined traditional ranching with scientific methods to create something sustainable for generations. Zara shared her plans to develop a unique line of horses, specifically bred for the demands of the Northwest Territories, combining the endurance of Arabians with the hardiness of local stock. What neither discussed was the growing attachment forming between them, a connection deeper than friendship, but still unacknowledged. The first real test of their bond came in January, during a blizzard that swept in from Canada with deadly force. Nathan had been in Kennewick picking up supplies when the storm hit, making the road to the Diamond S impassable. Knowing Whispering Pines was closer, he fought his way there through blinding snow, arriving half-frozen at Zara's door. "Nathan," she gasped, pulling him inside. "You're blue with cold. What were you thinking traveling in this?" "Didn't want to impose on the hotel," he managed through chattering teeth as she helped him remove his ice-crusted coat. "Too many stranded travelers already." Zara bustled around, building up the fire, preparing hot coffee, and finding dry clothes that had belonged to her uncle. All the while, she scolded Nathan for his recklessness while relief at his safety made her hands tremble. "You could have frozen to death," she said, pressing a steaming mug into his hands once he had changed. "I knew you'd take me in," he replied with a weak attempt at his usual smile. "Of course I would, you fool," Zara said, her voice suddenly thick with emotion. "What would I do if—" She stopped abruptly, turning away to tend the fire. Nathan set down his mug and moved to her side. "Zara," he said softly. She kept her back to him. "You should rest. The storm might last for days." "Zara," he repeated, gently turning her to face him. "Look at me." When she did, the vulnerability in her usually confident eyes took his breath away. "I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you," she admitted, the words clearly difficult for a woman accustomed to protecting her independence. Nathan's hand came up to cup her cheek. "Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm too stubborn to die before I've mastered that flying lead change you've been teaching me." A laugh broke through Zara's worry, just as he'd intended. "You're impossible," she said, but she didn't move away from his touch. "One of my many charms," he agreed, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. The moment hung between them, possibility stretching taut as a drawn bowstring. Then Zara did something that surprised them both. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a statement. Nathan answered by drawing her closer, deepening the kiss until it became a conversation all its own, one they had been waiting months to begin. When they finally parted, breathless and flushed, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the first time I saw you ride across that field like you and thunder were one creature." Zara smiled, her usual reserve transformed by joy. "I think I've been waiting for you my whole life without knowing it." The blizzard raged for 3 days, trapping them together at Whispering Pines. They spent the time caring for the horses, keeping the fires burning and exploring this new dimension of their relationship. By unspoken agreement, Nathan slept on the sofa in the parlor, though their evenings ended with increasingly reluctant goodnight kisses. On the morning of the 4th day, they awoke to brilliant sunshine reflecting off pristine snow. The world was transformed, danger converted to beauty overnight. "I should check on the Diamond S," Nathan said after breakfast, though his tone lacked conviction. "Yes, you should," Zara agreed, equally unenthusiastic about ending their seclusion. He pulled her close, inhaling the scent of her hair. "Come with me, to the Diamond S." "Yes." "I don't want to be apart from you, even for a day." The naked honesty in his voice touched something deep within Zara. All her life, she had guarded her independence fiercely, viewing entanglements as potential cages. Yet with Nathan, Connection felt like freedom rather than constraint. "All right," she said. "Let me pack a few things." They rode together through a landscape of dazzling white, midnight thunder and rusty breaking trail through snow that reached their chests in places. The Diamond S had weathered the storm well, thanks to Nathan's foreman, a capable man named Henry Williams who had overseen the protection of livestock and buildings. "Miss Jameson," Williams greeted Zara with respectful surprise when they arrived. "Good to see you safe." "Mr. Sullivan was stranded at my farm during the blizzard," Zara explained, her cheeks coloring slightly. The foreman's knowing look suggested he understood more than was said, but his only comment was, "Fortunate for both of you, then." Mrs. Abernathy was less subtle. "Well, it's about time," she declared when Nathan explained that Zara would be staying for a few days. "I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in the root cellar together." "Mrs. Abernathy," Nathan protested, but the twinkle in his eye matched the housekeeper's own. Those few days stretched into a week as more snow made travel difficult. Zara found herself increasingly comfortable at the Diamond S, helping with ranch work during the day and sharing the evenings with Nathan. They read aloud from his parents' books, planned improvements for both properties, and talked about everything and nothing until the fire burned low. "I never expected this," Zara confessed one night as they sat side by side on the sofa, her head resting on Nathan's shoulder. "When I came to Kennewick, I was determined to focus solely on making Whispering Pines successful." "And now?" Nathan asked, his fingers entwined with hers. "Now I can't imagine success without you in it," she replied simply. February brought a thaw, turning roads to mud and keeping them occupied with the challenges of late winter on their respective properties. Their lessons resumed, though they had evolved into collaborative training sessions where each contributed equally to improving their skills. In town, people began to notice the changed dynamic between the Diamond S owner and the independent horse breeder. Most viewed the development favorably. Both were respected for their hard work and integrity, though a few expressed surprise that Nathan Sullivan would court a woman as unconventional as Zara Jameson. "Heard tell she wears trousers when she thinks nobody's watching," one old-timer commented at the general store. "Good for her," replied Mrs. Peterson, the milliner. "Skirts are a menace around horses. I'd wear trousers myself if I could get away with it." The gossip reached its peak when Nathan and Zara attended church together one Sunday in March, sitting side by side in the Sullivan family pew. The Reverend made a point of welcoming Miss Jameson and Mr. Sullivan with particular emphasis, causing Zara to stiffen slightly beside Nathan. "Ignore him," Nathan whispered, covering her hand with his. "He does the same to any unmarried couple over the age of 25. Zara relaxed, but the Reverend's attention highlighted something they had not yet discussed directly: where their relationship was heading. That evening, as they walked along the creek where they had first begun to know each other, Nathan finally broached the subject. "People are talking about us," he said, helping Zara across a particularly muddy section. "People always talk," she replied with a shrug. "It doesn't matter." "It doesn't," he agreed, "but it made me realize we haven't talked about certain things ourselves." Zara stopped walking, her heart suddenly racing. "What things?" Nathan took both her hands in his expression serious yet tender. "Zara, I need to know if you see a future for us. Not just as friends or business partners, but something more permanent." "You mean marriage?" Zara said quietly. "Yes." Nathan's directness was one of the qualities she most admired about him. "I love you, Zara. I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you. But I also know how much your independence means to you." Zara looked down at their joined hands, considering her words carefully. I've always feared marriage would mean giving up who I am. My mother loved my father dearly, but she disappeared into his life. Even her name became Mrs. Captain Jameson rather than Alina. That's not what I want, Nathan said earnestly. I fell in love with Zara Jameson, horse trainer extraordinaire who rides like the wind and speaks her mind. Why would I want to change that? She studied his face, seeing nothing but sincerity in his clear blue eyes. What about Whispering Pines? It's my home, my livelihood. It would remain yours, Nathan assured her. We could figure out a way to manage both properties together without either of us giving up what matters. The Diamond S and Whispering Pines could complement each other, cattle and horses, both operations stronger together than apart. The practical considerations he raised spoke directly to Zara's pragmatic nature. This wasn't a man asking her to abandon her dreams for his. This was a partner proposing they build something together. I love you too, Nathan, she admitted, her voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. But I need a little time to think about what this would mean for both of us. Nathan nodded, disappointment flickering briefly across his features before understanding took its place. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Spring arrived in earnest, bringing new life and new challenges. A band of horse thieves began operating in the area, targeting isolated farms and ranches. When 3 of Zara's yearlings disappeared from their pasture, she was devastated. They were the first foals born at Whispering Pines under my management, she told Nathan as they examined the cut fence where the thieves had entered. I had such plans for their training. Nathan's jaw tightened with anger. We'll find them, he promised, and the men responsible. He organized a search party that included his own ranch hands and several neighboring farmers. They tracked the stolen horses south toward the Columbia River, where the thieves had likely planned to cross into Oregon territory. The pursuit lasted 2 days, with Zara riding alongside the men despite several suggestions that she might be more comfortable waiting at Whispering Pines. Her tracking skills proved invaluable, and it was she who first spotted signs that the thieves had split up, taking different routes to confuse pursuers. Nathan, she called, dismounting to examine scuff marks on a rocky outcropping. Look at this. 3 horses went east from here, probably following the river, but these other tracks head southwest. Nathan knelt beside her, studying the signs. You're right, they're trying to divide our forces. My yearlings are with the eastern group, Zara said confidently. See this mark. That's Thunder's son. He has a distinctive chip in his left rear hoof that makes his tracks unmistakable. They split their search party, with Nathan leading the larger group east while his foreman, Henry, took 3 men southwest to investigate the other trail. Zara and Nathan, accompanied by 2 ranch hands, followed the river until they spotted smoke from a campfire in a sheltered cove. Approaching cautiously, they discovered 3 men and the stolen yearlings, along with several other horses that had likely been taken from other ranches. There are only 3 of them and 4 of us, Nathan whispered as they observed from a ridge above the camp. But they're armed. We have surprise on our side, Zara pointed out, and I'm not leaving without my horses. Nathan recognized the determination in her eyes and knew argument was pointless. All right, but we do this carefully. Johnson, you circle around to the east. Martinez, take the west. Zara and I will approach from the north once you're in position. Wait for my signal. The plan worked initially. They managed to get within 20 yards of the camp before one of the thieves spotted movement and shouted a warning. Gunfire erupted, forcing Zara and Nathan to take cover behind a fallen log as bullets splintered the wood around them. Stay down, Nathan ordered, returning fire with his Winchester rifle. But Zara had caught sight of one of the thieves attempting to escape with the yearlings. Without hesitation, she darted from cover, racing toward the horses with a speed and agility that momentarily stunned everyone, including the thieves. "Zara!" Nathan shouted, terror gripping his heart as she exposed herself to gunfire. She reached the panicking yearlings just as the thief was attempting to mount. With a move that combined perfect timing and sheer courage, Zara launched herself at the man, knocking him from the saddle. They tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs and dust. The distraction gave Nathan and his men the opening they needed. They rushed the camp, overwhelming the remaining thieves before they could bring their weapons to bear on Zara. When Nathan reached her, she was sitting on the chest of the would-be horse thief, a rock held threateningly above his head while she informed him in colorful terms exactly what she thought of men who stole other people's beloved animals. "Are you hurt?" Nathan demanded, pulling her to her feet and checking her for injuries. "I'm fine," Zara assured him, though a cut on her cheek was bleeding freely and her riding clothes were torn from the scuffle. Nathan's relief quickly transformed into anger. "What were you thinking? He could have killed you." "He was getting away with my horses," Zara replied, as if that explained everything. "Your horses aren't worth your life." "I knew what I was doing," she insisted. "I saw an opportunity and I took it. You took a reckless chance that could have ended with me burying you." Nathan's voice cracked with emotion. Zara's defiance faltered as she recognized the genuine fear behind his anger. "I'm sorry I frightened you," she said more gently, "but I couldn't stand by while they took what was mine." Nathan pulled her into a fierce embrace, heedless of their audience of ranch hands and subdued thieves. "You stubborn, incredible woman," he murmured against her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try not to," Zara promised, though they both knew her impulsive courage was as much a part of her as her skill with horses. They returned to Kennewick, with the thieves bound for the sheriff's jail and all the stolen horses recovered. The story of Zara's daring tackle quickly spread through the community, adding to her already colorful reputation. 2 nights later, after the excitement had settled, Nathan invited Zara to dinner at the Diamond S. She arrived to find the house unusually quiet, with no sign of Mrs. Abernathy bustling about the kitchen. "Where is everyone?" she asked, accepting the glass of wine Nathan offered. "I gave Mrs. Abernathy the evening off," he replied with a smile that didn't quite hide his nervousness. "I wanted us to be alone tonight." Zara raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his unusual behavior. "Should I be concerned?" "Not concerned, no." Nathan led her to the dining room where the table was set with flowers, candles, and the best china. "This looks suspiciously formal," Zara observed as he held her chair. Nathan took his seat across from her, his expression turning serious. "Zara, watching you risk your life for those horses made something very clear to me. That I'm reckless and impulsive," she suggested with a wry smile. "That life is unpredictable and precious," he corrected. "And I don't want to waste another day not being completely honest about what I want." He reached into his pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table between them. "I know you asked for time, and if you still need it, I'll understand. But I've been carrying this with me for weeks, waiting for the right moment." Zara's eyes widened as she stared at the box, her pulse quickening. "It was my mother's," Nathan explained, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "My father gave it to her when the Diamond S was nothing but a claim and a dream. They built everything together as equal partners." He looked up at her, his heart in his eyes. "That's what I'm asking for, Zara, not for you to become Mrs. Sullivan and disappear, but for us to build something together, something neither of us could create alone." Zara reached out with trembling fingers to touch the ring. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Like the woman I want to give it to, Nathan said. "Zara Jameson, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in everything, in ranching, in horse training, in life?" Zara looked from the ring to the man offering it, remembering the first day they'd met by the creek, his genuine admiration for her riding, his humble request to learn from her. In the months since, he had never once tried to diminish her or control her. Instead, he had celebrated her strength and independence while offering his own complementary qualities to create a balance between them. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with how easily the answer came. "Yes, I'll marry you, Nathan Sullivan." The joy that illuminated his face was worth any lingering doubts she might have harbored. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of passion and partnership. They were married in May, when the hills around Kennewick were carpeted with wildflowers. The ceremony took place on the boundary between their properties, symbolizing the union of not just two people but two legacies. Zara wore a simple ivory dress that allowed her to ride Thunder to the altar. Concession Nathan had readily agreed to when she expressed discomfort with the traditional arrival by buggy. "No bride has ever made a more magnificent entrance," the Reverend admitted after his initial shock at seeing Zara approaching on horseback, her copper hair crowned with flowers. Their union became the talk of the territory, not for its unconventionality, but for the visible happiness of the couple and the rapid prosperity of their combined ventures. The Diamond S. Whispering Pines partnership quickly developed a reputation for exceptional cattle and horses, with buyers coming from as far as California and Montana. Nathan and Zara maintained separate residences for nearly a year, traveling between the two properties as work demanded. Eventually, they expanded the Diamond S main house to accommodate Zara's office and personal belongings, while converting part of the Whispering Pines farmhouse into additional stables and training facilities. They worked side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to their shared enterprise. Nathan's scientific approach to breeding and range management complemented Zara's intuitive understanding of horses and market demands. They argued occasionally, both being strong-willed individuals with definite opinions, but disagreements always ended with compromise, rather than capitulation on either side. In the winter of 1885, Zara discovered she was expecting their first child, news that filled Nathan with equal parts joy and trepidation. "What if I'm not good at being a father?" he worried aloud as they lay in bed one night, his hand resting protectively over the slight swell of her stomach. "You'll be wonderful," Zara assured him. "You have endless patience with young colts and calves. A baby can't be much more challenging." "Colts don't grow up to run ranches," Nathan pointed out. "Neither will this child unless they want to," Zara said firmly. "Our son or daughter will choose their own path, just as we did." As her pregnancy progressed, Zara reluctantly cut back on riding, though she insisted on continuing to work with the horses from the ground. Nathan hovered anxiously until she banished him to the cattle operation with strict instructions not to return, until he could treat her like a capable woman rather than a piece of fragile china. "She's as strong as they come, Mrs. Abernathy reassured him when he fretted about Zara's determination to remain active. "Women have been having babies while working fields and tending livestock since the beginning of time." Their son, Joseph Nathan Sullivan, was born on a stormy September night in 1885. He arrived with the same decisive energy that characterized his mother, the labor progressing so quickly that the doctor barely made it from town in time. "He's perfect," Nathan whispered, cradling his newborn son with awe while Zara watched from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "Of course he is," she replied with a tired smile. "He's ours." Motherhood changed Zara in ways she hadn't anticipated. The fierce protectiveness she had always felt toward her horses transferred to her child with multiplied intensity. Yet rather than diminishing her independence, the experience expanded her sense of self, adding new dimensions to her identity without erasing what had come before. Nathan proved to be an exceptionally involved father, as comfortable changing diapers as he was negotiating cattle prices. He built a special cradle that could be moved between their various work locations, allowing young Joseph to be with them throughout the day. By his first birthday, Joseph was already showing signs of inheriting his parents' affinity for horses. His first steps were taken toward the corral fence, and his first distinct word was horse, pronounced with such enthusiastic emphasis that both Nathan and Zara collapsed in laughter. "He's definitely our son," Nathan observed as they watched the toddler attempting to feed hay to a patient mare. "Did you ever doubt it?" Zara teased, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Not for a moment," Nathan replied, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Though I do wonder if he'll inherit your reckless streak or my cautious nature. With our luck, he'll combine both, carefully planning the most dangerous stunts possible." Their partnership continued to flourish as their family grew. A daughter, Elena Ruth, joined them in 1887, followed by another son, William James, in 1889. Each child developed their own relationship with the land and animals that sustained their family, though all three inherited varying degrees of their mother's natural riding ability and their father's analytical mind. The harsh winter of 1890 brought new challenges when heavy snowfall isolated many ranches, including the Diamond S. Cattle and horses struggled to find forage beneath the snow, and many ranchers in the territory faced devastating losses. But Nathan's scientific approach to feed storage and Zara's expert management of their breeding stock helped them weather the crisis better than most. "We're lucky," Nathan acknowledged one night as they sat by the fire after a grueling day of clearing paths to the outlying pastures where their strongest cattle were sheltered. "It's not luck," Zara corrected him, rubbing a salve into her chapped hands. "It's preparation and partnership. Neither of us could have managed this alone." The spring thaw revealed the extent of their success. While neighboring ranches lost up to 30% of their herds, the Diamond S Whispering Pines operation emerged with losses below 10%. Their methods, once viewed with skepticism, were suddenly in high demand as other ranchers sought advice on surviving future winters. By 1893, their reputation had grown to such an extent that the governor of Washington state personally requested their participation in developing improved agricultural practices for the region. Nathan traveled to Olympia several times for consultations, always returning with new ideas and connections that benefited their expanding enterprise. Zara, meanwhile, had developed Whispering Pines into one of the most respected horse breeding operations in the Pacific Northwest. Her unique line of horses, which she called Columbia Runners, combined the speed and endurance of Arabians with the hardiness and sure-footedness needed for the varied terrain of the territory. The U.S. Cavalry became one of her best customers, along with stagecoach companies and wealthy private buyers. One summer morning in 1894, as Zara worked with a promising 3-year-old stallion in the training ring, she looked up to see Nathan watching from the fence, his expression reminiscent of that first day they met. "What?" she called, guiding the horse through a complicated turning maneuver. "Just admiring the view," he replied with a grin. "You still ride faster and better than anyone I've ever seen." Zara brought the horse to a halt and dismounted, handing the reins to a waiting groom before approaching her husband. At 34, she was still as vibrant as the day they met, though fine lines had begun to appear at the corners of her eyes, evidence of years spent in the sun and wind. "Flatterer," she accused, though she smiled as she said it. "Honest observer," Nathan countered, pulling her close for a kiss that still held the passion of their early days together. When they parted, Zara studied his face, weathered by the elements but still handsome, with laugh lines around his eyes and a streak of gray beginning to appear at his temples. "What brings you over from the cattle side today?" "News," Nathan replied. "Remember that land south of the Columbia we looked at last year? The owners finally agreed to sell. The section with the natural springs and sheltered valley, the very same. 5,000 acres, perfect for expanding both the cattle operation and your horse breeding program." Zara's eyes widened. "How did you manage that? Morris swore he'd never sell to newfangled ranchers like us." "I may have had Mrs. Abernathy send one of her apple pies to his ailing wife every week for the past 6 months," Nathan admitted with a mischievous grin. "And possibly mentioned that our leaner is about the same age as his granddaughter who's interested in horses." "You bribed him with pie and potential friendship for his granddaughter," Zara laughed, shaking her head in admiration. "You're becoming quite the negotiator, Mr. Sullivan." "I learned from the best, Mrs. Sullivan." Nathan's use of her married name still held a note of pride, even after all these years. "Remember that stallion you talked the Spencer brothers into selling when they swore they'd sooner shoot him than let him go to a woman?" "Thunder's heir," Zara nodded, recalling the magnificent animal who had become the foundation of her breeding program. That wasn't negotiation, that was demonstration. She had simply ridden the supposedly unmanageable horse with such skill that the brothers couldn't deny her mastery. "Either way, we got what we needed," Nathan pointed out. "Just as we have now. The paperwork is ready to sign in town whenever you're able to come." Zara glanced at the young stallion she'd been training. "Give me an hour to finish with Thunder's Hope here and I'll be ready." That evening, after signing the papers that expanded their holdings to over 20,000 acres, they celebrated with dinner at Kennewick's finest restaurant, a far cry from the simple establishment that had existed when they first met. The town had grown along with their ranch, becoming a respectable center of commerce for the eastern Washington region. "You ever miss the early days?" Nathan asked as they shared a bottle of wine that had traveled all the way from California. "When everything was new and we were just figuring things out," Zara considered the question. "Sometimes. There was an excitement to those days, a sense of discovery." She reached across the table to take his hand. "But I wouldn't trade what we have now, the family we've built, the legacy we're creating, for anything in the world. Not even for the freedom of riding across the open country alone, answering to no one." He pressed gently, knowing how she had once valued her independence above all else. "That woman still exists," Zara replied with a smile. "She just has more to come home to now." As they rode back to the Diamond S beneath a canopy of stars, Zara reflected on the path that had brought them here. From that first encounter by the creek to their current position, as respected ranchers and community leaders, every step had been taken together, sometimes with one leading and sometimes the other, but always as partners. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect summer day that seemed to stretch endlessly with possibility. After breakfast, Nathan surprised Zara by suggesting they take the day for themselves. "The children are with Mrs. Abernathy visiting her sister in town. Henry can handle the cattle concerns, and Martin has the horse training well in hand," he reasoned. "When was the last time we rode together just for pleasure?" Zara couldn't remember, which was answer enough. They packed a simple lunch and saddled their horses, Zara on Thunder's Legacy, a daughter of her original stallion, and Nathan on Rusty's successor, a powerful chestnut named Captain. They rode west, following the creek that had once marked the boundary between their separate properties. The land rolled beneath them, familiar yet always changing with the seasons. Summer wildflowers nodded in the breeze, and hawks circled lazily overhead in the vast blue sky. After several miles, they reached a rise that offered a panoramic view of their expanded domain pastures where cattle grazed contentedly. Fields of hay ripening in the sun, horse paddocks where Zara's prized breeding stock roamed. And in the distance, the buildings of the Diamond S and Whispering Pines, now connected by well-traveled roads. "It's something, isn't it?" Nathan said, surveying the results of their years of work together. "Sometimes I can hardly believe we've built all this." "It's more than I ever dreamed possible," Zara admitted, pulling her horse alongside his. "Certainly more than I thought I could achieve when I first arrived here as a woman alone." Nathan smiled at her. "You were never meant to be alone, Zara. Neither was I. We just needed to find each other." They dismounted and spread a blanket in the shade of a towering pine tree, unpacking their lunch of cold chicken, biscuits, and Mrs. Abernathy's blackberry preserves. As they ate, they watched a herd of young horses racing across a distant meadow, their movements fluid and joyful in the summer sun. "Remember when you asked me to teach you to ride like I did?" Zara asked, leaning back against the trunk of the pine. "I remember being completely awestruck," Nathan replied with a chuckle. "You and Thunder came flying across that field like something out of a legend. I'd never seen such perfect harmony between rider and horse." "You've matched it now," Zara said, her eyes warm with pride. "Maybe even surpassed me." Nathan shook his head emphatically. "Never, I'm good, but you have a gift that can't be taught. It can only be born in someone." "Perhaps," Zara acknowledged. "But you've brought so many other gifts to our partnership. Your patience, your vision, your willingness to try new approaches, those are equally valuable." They fell into companionable silence, content to simply be together in the beauty of the day. Eventually, Zara stretched out on the blanket, resting her head in Nathan's lap while he gently stroked her hair, now streaked with a few strands of silver that she refused to hide. "You remember what you said to me that first morning I came for lessons?" Nathan asked. Zara smiled up at him. "I believe I told you that you relied too much on your hands and not enough on your body when riding. Before that, when I arrived early," Zara thought back. "I said you were early, and I said I didn't want to waste a minute of daylight," Nathan reminded her. "I still feel that way about every day with you. I don't want to waste a single moment." Zara reached up to touch his face, tracing the familiar contours with tender fingers. "We haven't wasted them, have we? Not the difficult days or the wonderful ones." "Not one," Nathan agreed, bending to kiss her with the devotion that had only deepened over their years together. Later, as the afternoon waned, they remounted and rode toward home, taking a route that passed through their new southern acquisition. The land was still wild, untouched by fences or buildings, a canvas awaiting their shared vision. "What do you see for this place?" Zara asked as they surveyed the valley with its natural springs and sheltered aspect. Nathan considered, his practical mind already assessing possibilities. "The western section would make excellent winter pasture for the cattle. That protected glen could support a hay operation. And those rolling hills to the east would be perfect for training young horses," Zara finished, her eyes lighting with enthusiasm. "The varied terrain would teach them sure-footedness, and there's enough open ground for developing speed and endurance." "Exactly what I was thinking," Nathan nodded. "We could build a small set of stables here, maybe a bunkhouse for hands working this section." "And a cabin," Zara suggested. Somewhere we could stay when we're working here, or just when we want to escape for a while. I like that idea, Nathan agreed. A place that's just ours. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they turned their horses homeward, riding side by side through the golden light of evening. The Diamond S buildings came into view, solid and welcoming in the distance. "Race you home," Zara suggested with a mischievous glint in her eye, the same spirit that had first captivated Nathan still vibrant within her. "You'll win," he pointed out with a knowing smile. "Probably," she agreed without false modesty, "but you've gotten close enough to make it interesting." Nathan laughed, the sound carrying across the open land. "All right, Zara Sullivan, show me again why I fell in love with you." "With pleasure," she replied, and with a subtle shift of her weight and a whispered word to her horse, she was off like a shot, her form still as perfect as it had been that first day. Nathan followed, urging Captain into a gallop. The gap between them remained fairly constant, close enough to be competitive, but with Zara maintaining her edge through the combination of skill and natural grace that had never diminished. As they thundered across the land they had nurtured and developed together, Nathan watched his wife ride with the same awe he had felt 11 years earlier. The wind caught her hair, now worn shorter in concession to practicality, but still vibrant in the setting sun. Her back was straight, her movements perfectly synchronized with her mount, every line of her body expressing the freedom and joy of speed. She was still teaching him. He realized not just about riding, but about living fully, taking chances and finding balance between caution and courage. Just as he had taught her that partnership could strengthen rather than diminish, that sharing dreams only made them more attainable. They reached the barn neck and neck, Zara pulling ahead in the final stretch with a triumphant laugh that warmed Nathan's heart. As they dismounted, breathless and exhilarated, the ranch hands working nearby smiled knowingly at each other. The boss and his wife still acted like newlyweds sometimes, racing their horses and looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. "Still the fastest," Nathan acknowledged, taking the reins of both horses as Zara brushed dust from her riding skirt. "For now," she replied with a wink, "but you keep getting closer." "I'll catch you one of these days," he promised, handing the horses over to a stable boy. Zara slipped her arm through his as they walked toward the house, where lights were beginning to glow in the windows against the gathering dusk. "I'm counting on it," she said softly. "We have all the time in the world." And as their children came running to meet them, faces alight with stories of their day in town, Nathan and Zara exchanged a glance that held all the love and partnership they had built from that first fateful meeting when she rode faster than anyone he'd ever seen, and he had the wisdom to ask her to teach him.